Most careers are focused on performing well in a single profession. Anne Brebner has been involved in a number of professions, and she has performed well in all of them. She has trained as a concert pianist, earned a degree in psychology, been an actress, a director, a college professor, a counselor, a film producer, an author. But she is best known for founding the leading talent agency in the San Francisco Bay Area. For these reasons, Anne Brebner has been chosen by the Marin Women's Hall of Fame as its 1989 Artist Honoree. I'm Sandra Foster, and I'm going to be talking with Anne about her life, her contributions to the arts, and about what has shaped her into the vital, creative person that she is. Hello, Anne.
Hi, Sandra.
And congratulations on your award.
Thank you.
You've been involved in film and theater most of your life.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how that interest started.
Well, I always was interested, I originally was interested in music, and I had this great vision of myself. I could see the dress. I saw more about the dress and the stage and what it all looked like than about the actual work of playing the piano. But I could see what I would look like as a concert pianist. I knew what it would have felt like, you know, what it would feel like to be really brilliant.
What do you think it is about acting and directing and such that has so fascinated you over the years?
In one way, it's because I'm terribly curious. I love to know how things work. I mean, I'm even curious about how my computer works, how an alarm clock works. I'm much more curious about creative things. How do they go together? What are the pieces? And how do the pieces follow each other? How do they fall together? Why can't you do that till you know what this is? And you know, what's the process that enables you to know to do that first? That kind of thing has always fascinated me.
Do film acting and stage acting differ?
Ooh, film acting is subtractive in the sense that it's being simpler and simpler and simpler and getting as close as you can to your own internal truth, with nothing between you and the camera, nothing at all.
You open to the camera?
Completely. And you don't edit, you don't try to show it anything, because it will photograph what you're showing it instead of what's really going on. Okay. And stage acting is additive, because you assume a character larger than life, you have an aesthetic distance to cover, and the dimensions are quite different.
You've done a lot of directing, Anne, and something I've always wondered, we speak in terms and think in terms of a director shaping a play, and yet to what extent can a director shape a play after the author has already shaped and written the play?
Well, I think one way of describing that would be to assume that the play written is a roadmap.
Okay.
And if you were going to France and you had a roadmap of France, it depends which side of the car you look out of. Depends whether you look at the mountains or at the lake.
It's true.
Or whether you focus on that wonderful avenue of trees, but you don't see anything in the fields.
But they're still there.
But they're still there. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, the director is the one who decides where the camera will be in the car, where the eyes of the people walking across the map, what they will see. Whether it is primarily the grief of so-and-so or the hatred of so-and-so, which is going to be more focused on.
But in film, much of the telling is visual, and of course the director would have latitude over that.
Yes.
What about on the stage?
On the stage, the last two plays I've directed, I've been lucky enough to direct with the writer right there. rewriting. They were new pieces that had never been done before. And in some cases, the writer would say, I didn't know that was there. I never understood that. It was something I'd seen that he had not consciously thought of, but to me it was very evident. In other cases, he would say, no, 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 she doesn't know that yet. And we'd have this terrific argument about, I think she does, well, she doesn't, but she must, and we'd argue about it and then come to a conclusion.
What do you find most challenging about directing?
Oh, the fact that every script I pick up, I think, I wonder if this is the one that I'm going to fall flat on my face.
Oh.
Is this the failure? Is this the one I won't, that I'll think I'm doing it wonderfully and it will turn out to be a disaster?
When do you know whether it's been a disaster or a success?
I'm not goal-oriented in that sense at all. I never know for sure because I lose myself in it. And once you've done it, you can't see it for the first time anymore. You have to wait for someone else to come and see it for the first time.
That's true.
And then they tell you whether it is a disaster or not.
What skills are involved in being a director? What main types of skills?
I'm lucky because I went to the Old Vic, and Michelle Sandeny and George Devine and Glenn Byam Shaw, who were the heads of that, decided that nobody could be a director unless they knew all of the technical work. So the last thing that a class at or year at the Old Vic did was to take out all of the lighting equipment, all of the sound equipment, break down all of the scenery. And you came into this theater with one little work light hanging in the middle of it. So the first thing you did was to put in the lighting and put in the sound equipment, rebuild all of the sets and hang the drapes and do all that kind of thing. You have to know technically what you're doing, what effects you can achieve, how to achieve them. I've discovered recently, and I'm immensely curious about how, as I said before, how things work, that I go from a gut hit on what I get out of a scene the first time I read it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I put on the stage. And to some extent, you're a traffic cop.
What advice would you have for a starting director today?
Do it.
Do it.
Direct. Don't think about it. Do it.
And this is also the advice you give to actors and actresses.
Yes, it's not an academic subject. It's a craft and a skill. And to learn a craft and a skill, you absolutely have to do it.
After acting and directing for many years, you founded a talent agency in San Francisco.
That's right.
How did that come about?
Totally and completely by accident. Last thing on my mind, I had come to the States from England. I grew up in New Zealand, but I went to England and worked in the theater, and then I came here. And I thought I could get work as an actress. Certainly as a director. I did actually get some work as a director, but I tried to get work as an actress, and everyone said, you talk funny, did you know that? You talk very funny. And so nobody would hire this funny talking person. So I did, along with my husband, my then husband, teach some classes at an agency in San Francisco. And that agency, for a number of legal and technical reasons, folded. And somehow I made the mistake of saying, oh, as it folded and fell to the ground, and sort of caught it. And there I was with this little thing.
I'll save you.
I'll save you, I'll look after you. And then the Screen Actors Guild from Los Angeles called and said there was a film going to be made in San Francisco, and there is nobody there to service the company in terms of actors and extras and people. Would you do it? And so sort of by default, I rented an office through the letter slot for $30 a week. I mean, a month. Worse, it's $30 a month. And opened an office, and the director came into the office and said, no, we want this and this and this and this, and of course you'll payroll it. And I said, yes, of course. And called the bank and said, this is how green I was. what is payrolling.
How did you, as an agent, decide which actors and actresses you wish to represent?
It was difficult, but basically from a gut feeling.
How did you learn to do some of those things you'd not done? Did you have a mentor or a role model?
My curiosity helped a lot. And I hated to do a lot of that stuff. So I became very good at it and did it quickly and once. It was the only way I could handle it. I even tried to get a partner in who was, who wouldn't be interested in the things I wanted to do, the good stuff, would only be interested in the other. It didn't work.
Didn't work.
Because they wanted the good stuff too. And it's very difficult to be creative and practical.
Yes.
It's an asset and it's a problem too. And the other thing eventually was I gave so much time to supporting other people's creative work willingly and making an environment where it was possible for creative people to work with safety and a fiscally responsible environment, that eventually my own creativity was just, screeching to get out.
So that might have been the biggest minus when you were giving so much to the agency.
Yeah.
What was the biggest plus about the agency work?
It was very satisfying in many ways, partly because it was never the same 2 days in succession. It was like a perpetual Christmas tree. I get very bored with routine. I'm a very good entrepreneur and an extremely bad manager. I'm totally disinterested in management, so the whole thing of it always being different, always a new film, always a new director, a new producer, a new studio, it made it fascinating for me. I loved that.
Now, you teach workshops at this point a lot for actors and actresses.
I teach little groups of 10 people in a very, very specific ways of only film acting and what it is the camera will love and what it is the camera will hate. But I take actors who are already actors.
Okay.
And there's another technique of learning a script in one reading that I also teach to a group of 10 people.
You are just finishing or have just finished writing a book.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
It feels so good to have finished it finally. It's a book called Creative Blockbusting, and it is about that particular subject of what creates blocks in people who are leading creative lives, actors, writers, photographers, painters, mainly actors and writers and directors. And it starts off, the first part of the book is about how blocks get in place, with a lot of emphasis on dysfunctional homes and dysfunction in the workplace as well. And then the second half of the book deals with various ways of dealing with that.
Okay.
And hopefully making it better.
You've also worked on producing a film at one point. Tell us about Hard Laughter. I love the title.
I love the title and I adore the project, and I've worked on it now for some 5 years and it has not gotten produced. Producing a film is incredibly difficult, and it's something that I have now decided that I don't really want to do.
Okay.
But I've got this project that I am deeply invested in emotionally. I want to have something to do with it. I want to cast it, or some people think I should direct it. It would be a very foolhardy producer who'd have a first-time film director directing a film like that. I recognize that, although I'd love to do it. And I haven't figured out yet how to find adoptive parents for this project who will feed it and get the infusion of cash it needs so that it can come to, its full life. It's an unresolved piece.
You have given a real legacy to Marin County in founding and nurturing the Mill Valley Film Festival, and I'd like for you to tell us about that.
Well, I didn't found it altogether. Mark Fishkin founded it, but I did get involved with it right near the beginning. And I loved the people and the films and the feeling. And I was actually, this is the truth, that it was as close as this. I was sitting at home one day thinking, I wonder how you get involved in something like that. I wonder if I called him. You know, it was carting chairs around old Brown's Hall and setting them up and getting the screen in. But I loved the feeling of it. And I was about to find out, and Mark Fishkin called me and said, what would it take to get you interested in the film festival? I said, well, you've just said it. You've already done it. And he asked me if I'd like to join the board, which was non-existent almost at that time. And I've been with it ever since. I was president of it for 6 or 7 years. And it's been a great joy because of the people involved in Mark's vision and being able to do something which, it does have a glitzy exterior, but it also has a very good heart and soul.
You were born in New Zealand in
Yes, the other side of the world.
1923. Your father was a plastic surgeon there, and your mother, I understand, died when you were an infant.
When I was born, actually.
When you were born,
yes.
so you never knew her.
No.
And you were reared by a great aunt. You had no brothers and sisters.
Correct.
What is your most vivid memory of your childhood in New Zealand?
The wide open spaces in one particular lake. I spent every summer at one lake and dreamed and puddled around in the lake and went out in boats by myself. I would spend the whole day alone or with a best friend around the lake. And I went back 3 years ago and sat on those rocks again. They were where I did a lot of my dreaming. Very unstructured time in the summers, and which has made me quite rebellious about things like that later on, about people interfering with time when I wanted to just dream.
What did you dream about?
Being a concert pianist, being somebody unusual, different, that people would recognize. That was very important for some reason. And now I hate part of that. But I don't know. I think if I'd been able to write at that time and had those skills, that there was the beginning of a lot of storytelling and inventive kind of curiosity-born stuff, that it would be quite interesting.
Who most influenced you as a child?
The person I learned, my mother's brother, was the most supportive person. He didn't influence me in the sense that I didn't want to be like him. But he owned a big ranch, and I was a year older than any of his children. He had 5 children, but I was always a very special child to him. I can remember riding with him on his horse in the snow over the ranch, riding, you know, with me sitting right in front of him, and saying to him, what would happen if I got lost, or if you got lost? And he would say, we won't get lost. And I'd say, yes, but what would happen if he would, because there was all this snow and hills. And he'd say, well, if you ever get lost, don't run around crazy, stay still until you know where you are. And you'll know where to go when you know where to go. And it drove me mad. I can remember arguing with him that didn't make sense, and he said, oh yes it does. And I've used it since. There's lots of him sort of comes through.
And that's true on a lot of levels.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, lots and lots of levels. Yeah, it's a very profound piece of information, actually.
Your father was a busy surgeon. What kind of time did you get to spend with him?
Not much, and he was very remote. Now I look back and can see, you know, the configuration of his family and the fact that his father died and his mother died, and then my mother died, that it must have done something to his ability to be really close to people. That my memory is he never mentioned her until the night before I was married. It's the first time I ever heard him mention my mother.
Ooh.
Very remote man.
Do you think he had difficulty relating to you as a girl?
Well, he wanted a boy, and he did his best. I mean, I could tear down an automobile engine
Yes.
by age 10, which
Yeah.
was not generally considered as useful to a little girl as how to be polite and say please and thank you, which I wasn't very good at.
What about your great aunt? What was she like?
She was a wonderful woman. I don't know how old she was. I wish I did know how old she was when she came to look after me. She was a wonderful gardener and a wonderful cook and a wonderful sewer.
A caretaker.
A caretaker, a very simple woman, a very loving woman. Unfortunately, when I was 12, she suffered a stroke and went into hospital and never came out again. And from then, from 12 on, I literally reared myself.
Where did you go to college and what did you study?
I went to college in New Zealand and I did a double degree, one in abnormal psychology and one in music, theoretical music. And then I went back and did postgraduate work in psychology and was going to go and do a whole medical degree to become a psychiatrist. At the same time, I was accepted to the Old Vic in London as an actress, so I threw the medical school away and went to the Old Vic.
Was it a difficult decision?
I got the letters of acceptance on the mail in the same day, and I can remember walking up the driveway of the house and crumpling up med school and saying, yay, I'm going to the Old Vic.
That's great. How did your father feel about that?
You had to ask. Not good. No one in the family had ever had such a career, nor been interested in one. And he really, I think it bothered him terribly. And he said he would not support me, and he didn't.
I want to backtrack just a
Yes,
little.
sure.
What happened to the dream and the work of becoming concert pianist?
Oh, that was one of those things where one's parent says, having encouraged you all the way, you suddenly are going to go to college. I was going to go to Germany and study, I thought. And then my father said, you go to college, you go to university, you get a degree. Then if you're still interested in all this foolishness, you can go and study the piano. My answer, which was really a very stupid one, was not to play the piano again.
Ooh,
Just
extreme.
extreme. And it undoubtedly did something to me that was not good, because that was one of my great creative outlets.
Did you ever go back at any time in your life and play again?
I do play now a little bit for myself, but I hate it if anyone else is in the house when I'm playing.
Interesting.
But it's just purely as a personal outlet.
I wonder what your feelings were as you left New Zealand to go halfway around the world to London.
Oh,
For the first time, I
for
assume.
the first time. It was really a dramatic, moment when, this is a quote from something in the New York Times the other day, where the self gives up images and expectations and moves to write its own history.
How did you and your husband decide to move from London to San Francisco, Bay Area?
Yeah, Bay Area. Well, he had been at Stanford as a Fulbright scholar the year before I went to the Old Vic.
Okay.
And then he went back to the Old Vic to teach. And we weren't married until a year later, by which time he'd moved back here, saying the absolute nirvana of the world was Sausalito. That's where he wanted to live the rest of his life. So we were married in New Zealand, actually, and came to live in Sausalito.
And one of the first things you did here was teach in college, I believe. Tell me about that experience.
I taught at College of Marin. I was hired to go to College of Marin because they had access to enough money to build that theater that is there now, and I knew a lot about theater construction and so on. And they did not have a drama department there at that time. And so I was hired to create a drama department and create a plan for a theater.
You have two sons now in their late 20s. What have you tried to instill in them?
I used to say, and I think I still believe this, that you always have options. And if you ever feel that you're in a corner, just stop and breathe and do what my uncle says, don't run around crazy. And look for those options because they're always there.
How did you juggle your time when you had 2 young sons and an agency and other involvements and commitments?
Well, that was it. I didn't do much else except the children and the agency. I was not involved very much in any other kinds of activities. I didn't do any directing or anything for a while when the kids were little. I think I needed them almost more than they needed me. They were such an important part of my life.
How do you think your boys were psychologically affected by your active and public life?
They say that they're very grateful for it, that it taught them to be independent. If anything, it forced them to make decisions for themselves, perhaps too early.
You and your husband had the 2 boys together, were married for many years, and of course shared a love of the theater and did the agency together.
Right, at the very beginning, yes.
And yet you divorced many years later. I wondered why that was and what your feelings were at that time.
I think that what happened was we grew at different paces. And I think that John gave me a tremendous security about myself that I hadn't had before. And what happened was I shot off like some kind of rocket into space with a new and added certainty about myself.
We've covered a lot of territory, and there's a lot about you to try to explore. Is there anything you would like to add? Any wisdom or anything about yourself or your life, or something that we've not gone into that you would like to tell us about?
Well, I think the thing it relates to why you and I are here and the Hall of Fame. The thing that was so amazing to me and humbling was the people I found myself with at that event. And the extraordinary accomplishments which most of us seem not to have regarded as being extraordinary while we were doing them. That they were there to be done, and we sort of stubbed our toe against them, or no one else was doing it, or it seemed to be important at the time, but not something that would become, something that you get an award for 20, 30, 40 years down the road. I think that whole feeling, from one who's led a life which has been fairly visible, the hundreds of thousands of not so visible heroes who do the kinds of things that the women that I was associated with there do.
Yes.
That's something I think about a lot.